My name is Sarah Chen, and I need to tell you about the day I begged for my life and received something I never expected. I'm 43 years old now. This happened when I was 27, 16 years ago in the summer of 2008. I was hiking alone on a remote section of the Pacific Crest Trail in Northern California, carrying trauma I didn't know how to process and a desperation I couldn't articulate. I'd gone into those mountains to decide whether to keep living, had planned to hike until I found a cliff high enough, a drop far enough, a way to end the pain that had consumed me for 2 years since the assault that destroyed my life. I was 3 days into what I'd intended to be my final hike when I encountered him. A Bigfoot. Massive, terrifying, impossible. He stepped out of the trees directly into my path, and in that moment of pure animal terror, I did something I hadn't been able to do since the night I was attacked. I begged. "Please," I said, my voice breaking. "Please don't hurt me." And what happened next changed everything. Not just my fate that day, my entire life. Because he didn't hurt me. He looked at me with eyes that held impossible understanding, made a sound that somehow communicated meaning without words. And then he did something that saved my life, in ways I'm still understanding 16 years later. He showed me I wasn't alone, that someone, something, saw my pain. That my plea mattered. That I mattered enough to be heard even by a being that had every reason to avoid humans entirely. This is the story of how a creature that supposedly doesn't exist saved me from suicide. How an impossible encounter gave me a reason to keep living. And how 16 years later, I'm still discovering layers of what he gave me that day. I'd been a different person before the assault. Confident, outgoing, full of plans and dreams and certainty about who I was and what I wanted. I was 25, working as a software engineer in San Francisco, dating someone I thought I'd marry, living the life I'd worked so hard to build. And then one night in October 2006, a man I knew professionally, someone I'd trusted enough to meet for drinks to discuss a potential business collaboration, put something in my drink. I woke up in his apartment hours later, knew what had happened even before the physical evidence confirmed it, reported it, went through rape kit examination, filed police report, did everything you're supposed to do. Nothing happened. He had better lawyers, had a story that was believed over mine. The investigation went nowhere. The prosecutor declined to file charges. Insufficient evidence, they said, despite my testimony. Despite the toxicology report showing rohypnol in my system. Despite everything. He walked free. Continued his life. Continued his career. While mine fell apart. I quit my job. Couldn't stay in the same industry. Couldn't risk running into him. Broke up with my boyfriend. Couldn't handle intimacy anymore. Couldn't trust. Couldn't explain the person I'd become. Isolated myself. Developed PTSD that manifested as constant hypervigilance, panic attacks, insomnia, flashbacks. Tried therapy. Tried medication. Tried everything recommended for trauma recovery. Nothing worked. The therapist said I needed time. Said healing wasn't linear. Said I'd get through this. But 2 years passed and I wasn't getting through it. I was drowning, and I was tired of fighting to stay afloat. So in June 2008, I decided to stop fighting, decided to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, or at least a portion of it, until I found the right place. Told my family I needed solo time in nature to clear my head. Didn't tell them it was goodbye. Didn't leave a note. Figured my absence would be explanation enough eventually. Just packed my gear, drove to the trailhead, and started walking north. The first 2 days were mechanically simple. Walk, make camp, sleep poorly, wake up, walk more. I wasn't really seeing the landscape, wasn't appreciating the beauty everyone always talks about when they discuss the PCT. I was just moving through space, waiting for the moment when I'd feel ready, when I'd find the right cliff, or the right method, or the right moment to stop existing. Day 3, I woke up feeling different. Not better, worse, more certain. Today, I thought. Today I stop hurting. There was a section ahead that I knew from my trail maps had steep drop-offs. High enough, remote enough. I could walk there, could end it. could finally stop the constant screaming in my head that no one else could hear. I was hiking toward that section when he appeared. Mid-afternoon. I'd been walking for hours, barely paying attention to my surroundings beyond basic trail navigation. And then suddenly there was movement in the trees to my left. Large movement. Bear was my first thought, and I froze. Ironic that I was walking toward suicide, but my body still instinctively feared death by bear. But it wasn't a bear. He stepped out from behind a massive Douglas fir about 30 feet ahead of me, stepped directly onto the trail. And my brain struggled to process what I was seeing because it couldn't be real, couldn't be possible. But there he was, 9 feet tall at least, maybe 800 pounds, covered in dark brown fur that was sun-bleached lighter on his shoulders and chest. Face that was neither human nor ape, but something distinct, ancient, impossible. Arms that were proportionally longer than human. Hands that were massive but had an articulation that suggested manipulation capability beyond mere strength. We stared at each other. I don't know how long. Felt like hours. Was probably seconds. And in those seconds, every fear I'd been carrying since the assault crystallized into pure animal terror. This is how I die, I thought. Not by choice. By being in the wrong place. By encountering something that shouldn't exist. By violence I can't control or predict or survive. And something broke in me. Not broke. Shattered. The wall I'd built around my trauma, around my pain, around everything I couldn't process. It all came crashing down. And I did what I hadn't been able to do since the night I was assaulted. I begged. I verbalized my fear. I made myself vulnerable. I asked for mercy from a being I had no reason to expect would offer it. "Please," I said, my voice cracking, tears starting before I could stop them. "Please don't hurt me. Please, I can't. I can't take any more. Please." I sank to my knees on the trail. Not strategically, just collapsed. Sobbing. Shaking. Begging this impossible creature not to hurt me because I'd been hurt so much already and I couldn't survive more, and please, please, please just let me go. And he didn't hurt me. He did something else entirely. Something that would take me years to fully understand. Something that saved my life in the most unexpected way possible. He moved. Not toward me. That was my immediate fear as my brain screamed run even though my body wouldn't cooperate. He moved sideways. Slowly. Deliberately. Keeping distance. Making himself less directly threatening. And then he sat down. Just sat. On the trail. This massive, impossible being lowered himself to the ground with surprising grace and sat cross-legged maybe 20 feet from where I was kneeling, still sobbing, still shaking. He made a sound. Not aggressive, not threatening. Low. Rumbling. Complex. Like language, but not any language I knew. And somehow, I can't explain this, don't expect you to believe it. Somehow I understood the intent, if not the words. He was trying to tell me something. Trying to communicate. I'm not a threat. I won't hurt you. You're safe. I stared at him through tears, my body still locked in panic response, but my brain starting to catch up. He wasn't attacking, wasn't approaching, was sitting, waiting, watching me with eyes that held something I hadn't seen in any human eyes since the assault. Understanding without judgment, recognition of pain without dismissal. Acknowledgement that something was deeply wrong without demanding I explain or justify or prove my suffering. You understand me? My voice was barely a whisper. Stupid question. Of course he didn't understand English. This was a creature, if he even existed, if I wasn't having some kind of breakdown. But he tilted his head slightly, made another sound, softer, and raised one hand, massive, with fingers that could probably crush my skull, and placed it over his chest. Then he gestured toward me, gentle, questioning. He was asking if I was hurt, if I was okay. This impossible being was showing concern. That realization made me cry harder, not from fear anymore, from something else, from the shock of unexpected compassion. From the bizarre, absurd, impossible fact that this creature was showing me more empathy in 2 minutes than most humans had shown me in 2 years. I'm not physically hurt, I managed to say between sobs. I'm so broken. I'm so tired. I came here to... I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say it out loud. But he seemed to understand anyway. His eyes, deep brown, impossibly expressive, held something that looked like sorrow. He stood slowly. I tensed, ready to run or freeze or whatever my traumatized body would choose. But he didn't approach. Instead, he gestured. A clear motion. Follow me. Then he turned and started walking back into the forest, away from the trail. He paused, looked back, made that questioning sound again. The meaning was clear. Will you come? Every rational thought screamed no. Don't follow the cryptid into the forest. Don't leave the trail. Don't trust something that shouldn't exist. But I was already so far beyond rational thought. Had already planned to walk off a cliff later that day. What did it matter if I followed him? If he killed me, at least it would be over. If he didn't, well, I didn't know what. But curiosity was a feeling I hadn't experienced in 2 years. That alone was worth something. I stood on shaking legs, wiped my face. Okay, I said. Okay, I'll follow you. He led me about half a mile off trail. Not difficult terrain. He chose a path that I could manage, seemed aware of my limited mobility compared to his. We emerged into a small clearing beside a stream. Beautiful spot. Private. Peaceful. The kind of place that would photograph perfectly for nature magazines. He gestured to a large flat rock beside the water. Sit. I sat. He gathered something from near the base of a tree. Roots, I realized, and other plants I didn't recognize. He brought them to the stream, washed them carefully, then approached me slowly, held them out, offering. His expression. I know how this sounds, how impossible it is to read expression on a face structured so differently from human. But his expression was gentle, encouraging. Eat these, they help. I took them. Didn't eat them immediately. Even suicidal. I had enough survival instinct not to consume unknown plants. But I held them, and he sat down across from me. Waited. Patient. Then he reached into a pouch-like structure made of woven plant fibers that hung from his shoulder. Pulled out similar plants. Ate them himself. Showing me. Safe. This is what I eat. This won't harm you. I ate them. Tasted bitter but not terrible. He watched. Nodded approval when I finished. Then he did something I still remember with perfect clarity 16 years later. He placed one massive hand over his chest. Made a sound. A name, I realized. He was telling me his name. Or as close as I could approximate. Something like, Quaha. Quaha, I repeated. He nodded. Then he pointed to me. Questioning. Sarah, I said. My name is Sarah. He tried to repeat it. Sahra. Close enough. And in that moment, sitting by a stream in a hidden clearing with an impossible being who'd just introduced himself, something shifted. Not healed. Healing would take years. But shifted. For the first time since the assault, I felt seen. Not as a victim. Not as broken. Just as a person. As Sarah. As someone whose pain was acknowledged without needing to be explained or proven or justified. We sat there for hours. He didn't speak English, or if he could, he didn't use it. But we communicated anyway, through gestures, through sounds, through the strange empathy that can sometimes exist between beings that transcends language. He asked questions. I interpreted them as questions, about my life, my pain, what brought me to these mountains. I answered as best I could, using words and gestures and sometimes just sitting in silence that felt more communicative than most conversations I'd had in months. He told me things too, or I interpreted his gestures and sounds as telling me things, about his people, about watching humans, about seeing pain and not being able to help most of the time because humans were dangerous, unpredictable, violent, But sometimes, rare times, he'd encounter someone who needed help badly enough that the risk was worth taking. Someone whose pain called out in ways he couldn't ignore. "You saw I was planning to die," I said. Wasn't a question. He nodded, made a sound. Sorrowful. Concerned. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled something else from his pouch. A small carved piece of wood, roughly worked but clearly intentional. He held it out. A gift. I took it, turned it over in my hands. It was shaped vaguely like a figure. Abstract, but definitely representing someone sitting. Someone at peace. "This is how you want me to be," I said. "Not dead, just at peace." He nodded, made an affirmative sound. Then he touched his chest again, touched the carved figure, then pointed at me. The meaning was clear. "I made this, for you, to remember. You can find peace, you deserve peace, but not through death." I cried again, but different tears. Not despair, something else. Something almost like hope. We stayed in that clearing until sunset. Hours of strange, cross-species communication that I still can't fully explain. But what Quaha taught me in those hours was more valuable than 2 years of therapy had been. He taught me through action, through gesture, through presence, through a patience I hadn't experienced from any human since my trauma. He showed me plants. Which ones were edible? Which ones had medicinal properties? He'd gather something, show me the characteristics, leaf shape, growth pattern, smell. Then he'd demonstrate use. Not in a survival training way, in a, "this is how you take care of yourself" way. This plant helps with sleep. This one calms anxiety. This one helps with pain. He was teaching me tools, giving me resources for the suffering I carried. At one point, he led me to a different part of the clearing where the afternoon sunlight fell perfectly through the canopy. He sat, gestured for me to sit, and then he just existed, breathed, was present, nothing else. And I understood. He was teaching me meditation, teaching me to just be, not to fix anything, not to solve anything, just to exist in a moment without the constant terror and hypervigilance and pain, just to breathe and be alive and let that be enough. I tried, failed. My mind raced with all the usual spirals, the assault, the injustice, the ways my life had fallen apart, the reasons I'd come here to die. But he was patient. When I'd get lost in my head, he'd make a soft sound, bring me back, remind me, here, now, this moment. Just breathe. We did this for maybe an hour. And by the end, I'd managed maybe 30 seconds of actual presence. 30 seconds where I wasn't drowning in trauma. Where I was just Sarah, sitting in sunlight, breathing, alive. It felt like a miracle. He stood, gestured for me to follow again, led me to the stream. The water was crystal clear, moving quickly over smooth stones. He cupped his hands, drank, then gestured to me. I did the same. The water was shockingly cold, clean, pure, and something about the physical sensation, the cold, the clarity, cut through the emotional fog I'd been living in for 2 years. Quaha sat beside the stream, started doing something that took me a moment to understand. He was stacking stones, balancing them carefully, one on top of another, building a small cairn. His massive hands worked with surprising delicacy, finding the balance point of each stone, adjusting until it held. When he'd built a tower of 7 stones, he looked at me, gestured. "Your turn." I tried, failed immediately. The stones toppled. I tried again, failed again. Felt frustration rising, the same frustration that had defined my life since the assault. Nothing works. I can't do anything right. Everything falls apart. I'm broken and unfixable. But Quaha made a soft sound, calming, encouraging. Try again. He demonstrated once more, slowly, showing me. It's about patience, about finding the right angle, about adjusting, about accepting that it will fall sometimes and that's okay. Try again. I tried again, and again, and again. And after maybe 20 attempts, I got 3 stones to balance. They held. I stared at them, feeling disproportionate pride. I'd made something. Something small and temporary and ultimately meaningless, but something. Proof that I could still create, still succeed at something, still do more than just survive or plan to stop surviving. Quaha made an approving sound, nodded. Then he did something that made me understand the real lesson. He deliberately knocked over his cairn, let the stones scatter. Then he started building again. Different configuration, different stones, making something new from the scattered pieces. The metaphor was obvious, almost too obvious. But sometimes the obvious truths are the ones we most need to hear. Yes, things fell apart. Yes, you were broken. Yes, you scattered. But you can rebuild. Different than before. Maybe not as you were. But still you. Still something. Still worth building. I cried again. Seemed like all I did that day was cry. But these tears felt different. Felt like something releasing. Like pressure escaping. Like maybe, possibly, the beginning of something other than endless drowning. As the sun started setting, Quaha stood, gestured back toward the trail. Time to return. I felt sudden panic. I didn't want to leave. Didn't want to go back to the world where I was alone with my trauma. Wanted to stay here in this impossible clearing with this impossible being who'd shown me more kindness in one afternoon than most humans had shown in 2 years. He seemed to understand my reluctance, approached slowly, and then he did something I'll never forget. He extended his hand, massive, powerful, capable of incredible violence, and held it out. Palm up, offering, not demanding, not forcing, just offering contact if I wanted it. I placed my hand in his. My entire hand fit in his palm with room to spare. His fur was coarse, but not rough. His skin beneath was warm. He closed his fingers gently around my hand, not restraining, just holding. And the physical contact, safe physical contact from a male being for the first time since the assault, broke something else in me. Or maybe fixed something. I don't know. But I stood there sobbing while this impossible creature held my hand with impossible gentleness and let me grieve everything I'd lost. When I finally stopped crying, he released my hand, reached into his pouch one more time, pulled out something else, a small bundle of dried plants tied with plant fiber. He pressed it into my hand. Then he touched his temple, touched his chest, touched the bundle. The meaning was clear. This is for your mind, for your heart, for your pain. Use it when you need it. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you, Quaha. He made a sound. Gentle, warm. Then he gestured toward the trail. I need to go. You need to go. But different directions. This is goodbye. Will I see you again? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. Slowly. Sad but certain. No. This was one meeting. One intervention. One moment of connection across impossible boundaries. He'd given me what he could. Now I had to choose what to do with it. He led me back to the trail. When we reached it, he stopped. Waited until I stepped onto the path. Then he raised one hand. A gesture I interpreted as farewell. Or maybe blessing. Or maybe just, good luck, Sarah. I hope you choose to live. Then he turned and disappeared into the forest. Silent, impossible, gone. Like he'd never been there at all. Except I had the carved figure in my pocket. And the bundle of plants. And the memory of his hand holding mine. And the knowledge that someone had cared enough to stop me from walking toward that cliff. I stood on the trail for a long time. Then I turned around. Started walking back the way I'd come. Back toward the trailhead. Back toward my car. Back toward life. I didn't go to the cliff. Didn't finish the hike. Hiked back to the trailhead. Took 2 days. Camping overnight once, moving slowly. The whole way, I kept touching the carved figure in my pocket. Proof. Evidence. Something real to confirm that the encounter had happened, that I hadn't hallucinated the whole thing in some kind of breakdown. When I reached my car, I sat in the parking lot for an hour. Engine off. Just sitting. Trying to decide what came next. I'd left for that hike planning never to return. Now I'd returned. But to what? To the same broken life. Same trauma. Same pain. Same reasons I'd wanted to die. Nothing external had changed. The man who assaulted me was still free. Still living his life. I still had PTSD. Still couldn't work in my field. Still was isolated and struggling and broken. But something internal had changed. I couldn't quite name it. But it was there. Some small shift. Some tiny flame that hadn't existed before. Not hope exactly. Just possibility. The possibility that maybe I could rebuild. Maybe differently. Maybe smaller. Maybe not the life I'd planned. But still a life. Still something worth not giving up on yet. I drove home. Didn't tell anyone where I'd been or what had happened. What would I say? I met Bigfoot and he talked me out of suicide through kindness and stone stacking. They'd have me committed. So I said nothing. Just told my family the solo hike had been good for me. That I'd needed the time alone. That I was glad to be back. I examined the plants Quaha had given me. Used internet research and indigenous plant knowledge databases to identify them. They were real. Medicinal plants used by indigenous peoples in that region for exactly what Quaha had indicated: sleep, anxiety, pain. I started using them. Not as primary treatment, but as supplement. And they helped. Not dramatically. Not miraculously. But they helped. The carved figure I kept on my nightstand. Looked at it every morning. Reminder. Someone believed I deserved to live. Someone thought I could find peace. Someone cared enough to intervene even though they had no obligation, no connection, no reason to risk themselves for me. I started therapy again. Different therapist. This time I was more honest. Told her I'd been planning suicide. Told her I'd had an experience in the mountains that changed my mind. Didn't tell her about Quaha. That stayed private. But told her I'd had a moment of clarity that made me want to try again. Want to rebuild even if I didn't know how. She worked with me on trauma processing, EMDR therapy, somatic therapy, tools for managing PTSD, strategies for building safety when your body never feels safe, ways to exist in a world that had proven itself dangerous. It was hard. Some days I still wanted to die. Some days the trauma felt overwhelming. But I kept thinking about those stones, about how they fell, about how Quaha built again. Different. Still something. Still worth building. I started hiking again. Short hikes. Local trails. Never alone at first. Brought friends, joined groups, needed people around for safety. But gradually, over months, I rebuilt my ability to exist in wilderness. Rebuilt my comfort with solitude. Rebuilt the part of me that had loved nature before trauma had made everything feel threatening. I changed careers. Couldn't go back to software engineering. Too many triggers. Too much risk of encountering my assailant at industry events. Instead, I trained as a wilderness therapy guide, helping other people process trauma through nature, using what Quaha had taught me: presence, patience, finding peace in simple actions like stacking stones or observing plants. I became good at it. Found purpose. Found meaning in helping others the way I'd been helped. I never saw Quaha again. Hiked that same section of the PCT multiple times, hoping for another encounter. Never happened. He'd said it would be only once. He'd kept that boundary. Part of me was disappointed. Wanted to thank him properly. Wanted to show him I'd survived. I'd rebuilt. His intervention had worked. But maybe that's not how it works. Maybe he knew. Maybe he trusted I'd figure it out. Maybe one intervention was all he could safely give. Years passed. The PTSD didn't disappear but became manageable. I learned to live with triggers. Learned to work through flashbacks. Learned that healing isn't linear, and some days would be harder than others, but that didn't mean I was failing. Learned that trauma changes you, but doesn't have to define you. Learned that the person I'd been before the assault was gone, but the person I was becoming was still worth being. I dated again eventually. Hard process. Took years to trust anyone with physical intimacy. Had to tell partners about the assault, about the PTSD, about what I needed to feel safe. Lost some relationships because they couldn't handle my trauma. Found one eventually who could, who was patient, who understood that some days I needed space, and some days I needed holding, and that both were okay. We married 5 years ago. He knows about Quaha. I told him the full story when we got serious because I needed him to understand that my survival, and therefore our relationship, existed because a Bigfoot showed me kindness when I needed it most. I work with trauma survivors now, lead wilderness therapy trips, teach stone stacking and plant identification and meditation and all the tools Quaha taught me. I don't tell my clients about him. They'd think I was crazy, would lose trust in my guidance. But I use his methods, his patience, his way of teaching through action rather than words, his understanding that sometimes presence is more healing than solutions. 16 years later, I'm alive. Not just surviving, actually living. Have a career I love. Have a partner I love. Have rebuilt a life that looks nothing like the one I'd planned before the assault, but is still good, still worth living, still mine. And I know with absolute certainty, that none of this would exist if Quaha hadn't stepped onto that trail in 2008. Hadn't seen my pain, hadn't cared enough to intervene, hadn't taught me that I deserved to live even when I couldn't see it myself. I owe him my life, and I'll never be able to thank him. Never see him again. Never confirm he was real beyond my own memory, and a carved figure that could have come from anywhere. But I know, and that's enough. But there's more to this story. Something I discovered 10 years after the encounter. Something that changed my understanding of what happened that day. Something that makes the whole experience even more impossible and more meaningful. In 2018, I was leading a wilderness therapy retreat in the same region of the PCT. Different section, but close enough. During a break, one of my colleagues, another guide I'd worked with for years, mentioned she'd heard stories from indigenous elders in the area about the old ones, who watched humans and occasionally intervened when someone was in extreme need. The old ones? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. The Sul Kalu, she said, using a term from local indigenous languages. What white people call Bigfoot. But the elders say they're not animals. They're people. Ancient people who've been here since before humans. And they have rules about non-interference. They don't interact with humans normally. But very rarely, when they see someone suffering badly enough, they'll break that rule. They'll intervene, show themselves, offer help, but only to people they judge worthy of saving, people who still have purpose, even if they can't see it themselves. I felt chills. How do the elders know this? Stories passed down through generations. Some elders claim direct encounters. Others inherited the knowledge. There's this one elder, Margaret. She's in her 90s now. She supposedly spoke with one of them for hours when she was young. Says they can communicate concepts without words. Says they understand human suffering because they've watched us for thousands of years. Says they grieve for us because we've lost our way, but still have potential to find it again. I asked if I could meet Margaret. My colleague made arrangements. 2 weeks later, I sat in Margaret's living room on the reservation, drinking tea, working up courage to tell her my story. When I finally did, told her about Quaha, about the clearing, about the stone stacking and the carved figure and the intervention that saved my life, she didn't react with disbelief, didn't question, didn't suggest I'd hallucinated. She just nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something she already knew. "You were chosen," she said simply. "The old ones don't intervene randomly. They watch. They see people suffering. They see many people suffering, but they only show themselves to certain ones. People whose pain comes from injustice rather than their own choices. People who have potential to heal and then help others heal. People who could become bridges between pain and recovery, between trauma and growth, between the broken world and the world that could be. He saw that in you. saw that your suffering wasn't final, saw that if you survived, you'd help others survive. That's why he broke the rule of non-interference. Not because you were special, because you could be special if you lived. How do you know this? I asked. Because the same thing happened to me. 60 years ago. I was 17. I'd been sent to boarding school where they beat the Indian out of us, beat my language out of me, beat my culture out of me, beat me until I wanted to die. I ran away, walked into the forest planning never to come back, and one of them found me, sat with me, showed me plants, taught me to be present, gave me a carved figure. I still have it. I can show you. Made me understand that my people needed me alive, that the knowledge I carried, the language they'd beaten but not killed, would matter someday, that I had purpose even when I couldn't see it. She did show me the carved figure. It was remarkably similar to mine. Same abstract style, same sitting posture, same sense of peace. They've been doing this for generations, Margaret continued, watching humans suffer, mostly staying hidden because humans are dangerous, but sometimes, rare times, intervening, saving people who could matter, who could help, who could heal and then help others heal. It's their way of balancing. They can't save everyone, can't fix human society, can't stop us from hurting each other, but they can save individual people who might create small ripples of healing, might help a few others, might make tiny differences that add up over time. Did you ever see him again? I asked. The one who saved you? No. They don't do multiple encounters normally. One intervention, one teaching. Then they leave you to figure out the rest. But I felt his presence sometimes over the years. Times when I was struggling, times when I doubted my purpose, I'd feel watched, feel supported, like he was checking in, making sure his intervention had worked, making sure I was still doing what he'd saved me to do. What were you saved to do? I asked. Preserve my language. I'm one of the last fluent speakers of our traditional dialect. I've spent 60 years teaching it to young people, making sure it doesn't die when I do. That was my purpose. That's what he saw in me that day when I wanted to die. He saw that I carried something rare and valuable, that my death would mean more loss than just one girl, that I was a vessel for knowledge that needed to survive. So he saved the vessel to save the knowledge. I understood then. Quaha hadn't saved me randomly, hadn't intervened because he was kind, though he was kind. He'd intervened strategically. He'd seen that my suffering came from injustice, that I had skills and knowledge and potential that could help others, that my death would waste something that could be valuable if I redirected my pain into purpose. He'd saved me because he'd judged me worth saving, because he'd seen I could become someone who helps others survive trauma, could become a guide, could become someone who teaches others the tools he taught me. And I had. I'd done exactly what he'd seen I could do. I'd taken my trauma, my survival, my healing journey, and turned it into career helping others. I'd become exactly the person he'd predicted I could become when he chose to break the rule of non-interference. Do they still do this? I asked Margaret. Still intervene? Less often now. There are fewer of them. They're dying out. Habitat loss, human expansion, climate change. Their numbers are declining. And as they decline, they're more careful about revealing themselves. The risk is greater. But yes, sometimes they still intervene. Still save people who are worth saving. Still create small ripples of healing in a world that desperately needs healing. I left Margaret's home understanding my encounter differently. It wasn't random kindness. It was calculated intervention. Quaha had assessed me, judged me, decided I was worth the risk of revealing himself. Decided my potential future value outweighed the danger of contact. I'd been chosen. Not for being special, but for having potential to become special if I lived. That knowledge carries weight, responsibility. He saved me for a purpose. Expects me to fulfill that purpose, to help others the way he helped me, to create ripples, to matter. And 16 years later, I'm trying. Every client I guide through trauma processing, every person I teach stone stacking to, Every moment of presence I offer to someone drowning in pain. I'm fulfilling the purpose Quaha saw in me. I still have the carved figure. Keep it in my office now where clients can see it. Sometimes they ask about it. I tell them it's a reminder that peace is possible, that we can rebuild after breaking, that someone believed I deserved to live even when I didn't believe it myself. I don't tell them who that someone was. That stays private. But the message is the same. You deserve to live. You have purpose. You can rebuild. Different than before, but still you. Still something. Still worth building. Please don't hurt me. I begged 16 years ago. And the being who stepped out of the trees didn't hurt me. He saved me. Not from him. From myself. From pain. From giving up. He changed my fate that day. Changed my trajectory from death to life. From despair to purpose. From victim to survivor to guide. I owe him my life. Owe him my career. Owe him every person I've helped since. Every life I've touched. Every small ripple of healing I've created. It all traces back to that day. To his intervention. To his judgment that I was worth saving. And that's the revelation that terrifies and inspires me. Somewhere in those mountains, beings are watching, judging, assessing which humans are worth saving, making calculated interventions, creating ripples, changing fates. And we never know, never see them, never understand that our lives, our purposes, our healing journeys might exist because someone impossible decided we were worth the risk. I was worth the risk. Quaha decided that. And 16 years later, I'm still trying to prove he was right.